trying to figure out ultimately what is.
It's still a mystery as to why it took them. Hey everyone, I'm Lauren Conlin, and welcome to Primetime Crime Live. As always, I'm with my co-host, Jarrett Ferrantino. Hi, Jarrett. How are you?
Hey, Lauren. I'm well. Hey, everyone out there.
Yeah, so we wanted to provide some updates and some information on Nikki Cheng Saelee McCain, who is still missing. I mean, this is just so tragic, and it's been too long, you guys. It's been way too long, and we have been following this case, and we're just really happy tonight to have Nikki's sisters join us, as well as Jason Jensen, who is a co-founder of the Cold Case Coalition and an amazing PI. You've seen him everywhere. You've seen him on Dateline, Nancy Grace, you name it. He is so knowledgeable and he knows his stuff. But just very quickly, for those who are not aware of Nikki's situation, Nikki went missing. Her last, I guess, known text messages was to her sister, Chloe, at 12:35 a.m. on May 18th. That was the last that anyone's heard from her. And her car was found May 25th in Tehama County, the car she had was a Chevy Avalanche, a truck. We don't know if she was driving it that night. We know a few things that we can go over. The main thing to know about this case and what makes it extra suspicious is that Nikki's estranged husband, Tyler McCain, was set to go to a jury trial in July for a alleged domestic violence incident back in December. And obviously, without Nikki present, the DA had to drop the charges. In between there was a fire on the McCain property on Olinda Road, and that fire spread over 98 acres, burning cars, but not a home or anything. We've got some more things to share, but Jarrett, really quickly before we bring anyone in, I mean, have you ever seen a missing persons case like this?
You know, the crazy thing about this case is where there's smoke, there's fire, right? So we have two fires. Since this has all played out, we had you said it was a domestic violence case. It was a damn near murder case. I mean, Tyler was accused of having come very close to killing Nikki. That case was pending. So we have Nikki, who was not only a victim, but an eyewitness against her estranged husband. Since she's gone missing, there have been two huge fires, which span about 140 acres in total, which destroyed vehicles. We have a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of people looking for this mother of four, just trying to get answers. I mean, this case, every week, there are no answers and more questions. I mean, so that's really what's been really thought-provoking and crazy about this case.
Yeah, you nailed it. Every single week, you guys, if you've not followed this case, every single week there's more bullshit. Excuse my language. And I understand that everyone is a suspect, right? No one is not a suspect until Nikki is found. It's just blowing my mind at this point that there hasn't been enough evidence to charge anyone yet. But with that being said, let's bring everyone in. I think Kay just dropped off by accident. I'm sure she'll be back. Hi, Chloe.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Of course. Let me bring Jason in. Hi, Jason. You're also muted. Let's get you unmuted. Yeah, I know. I had everybody drop off and then, but no, thank you, Jason, for joining us.
And then we're just waiting on Kay.
Here's Kay. Jason I think he just kicked himself off. He'll be back, but we can start. Chloe and Kay, I have some questions that I want to talk
to you both. Wait before you just welcome to you both. Welcome. We met very briefly tonight. I just want to say hello and welcome, and our thoughts are with both of you as you're searching for answers for Nikki and her kids. We just want to let you know that before we start talking about the details and the latest in her case.
Well, my question to you guys was going to be, how are you guys coping? How is your family coping? And how are the kids doing? I know that school hasn't started yet, but I can just imagine how hard this is for you guys. And, you are at this point, your sister's children's caretakers. And I'm thinking about them every day as well as you guys.
Thank you so much. School for us in California, we started school today. Um,
Oh,
and so
great.
I went back to work, and it's been stressful, and it's hard not to think about it all the time. But having the kids excited and loving their first day of school, and me going back to work, it was really, I can't find the right words to say it, but it was a really good feeling.
It's good to be in a routine, and we Chloe and myself and my husband, we all work in education. So for us, this cycle is it's like Chloe's saying, it's good to be back in a routine, and it's good to kind of get back in the swing of things. It's a good distraction too, because I feel like our summer's mostly been doing what we can to get her story out, and searching and doing everything we can. So I think being back in that routine has been good for us and the family.
I think it's good to be busy too, don't you think? When you sit
Mhm.
around and you don't have those answers, you just stew on those
Mhm.
questions. I think getting back into a routine and being busy is kind of a coping mechanism too, which is important.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to bring Jason back in, but hi, Jason.
Hi.
Yeah, we're talking about how Chloe and Kaye are doing and how Nikki's 4 children are doing amid their mother going missing. But are the kids, they are aware that she's missing? Are they doing okay, or as okay as can be?
I think okay as can be is a good way to put it. They are aware that she's missing. Unfortunately, with kids, at the time when she went missing, they were in school, and we didn't really want to have that talk with them until we had more details. Unfortunately, at school, one of the kids had already told them by the time we talked to them, so that to us was tough, because we felt like we kind of felt like we failed them a little bit, because we wanted to approach it, I guess, the right way, and there's just really not a right way to do it. But they are aware, and they do. I think they're a little more aware that it wasn't, and it's been a while now at this point. So I think they're a little more understanding that it's more serious, and it's not just that she may be back in a little bit. And I think we've had to be a little bit more
More realistic, maybe.
realistic with them. Yes, with we get a little bit paranoid too about their safety, and we've had to be pretty upfront with them about why we're being paranoid and why we're being a little extra cautious with them. So we have had to have some of those tough conversations about why we're being so paranoid.
Well, don't be so hard on yourself. There's no blueprint for this. So if you feel like you didn't handle it the right way, there's no guide to talking to young children about their mom being missing. And you do the best you can. And from what I can see, you're both fighting very, very hard for her and the kids. So don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah, and
You're
you
gonna
guys
hear things.
You're so sweet and you're so kind. I mean, the kids are so lucky to have you. And I'm just curious, are they asking for their dad? Are they asking for their grandma on that side? What's the dynamic there?
They haven't asked about their dad. It's been a little bit, but they do mention about their mom a lot.
It's almost, I mean, it's almost like they have, it's almost like they know, to be honest. They're not really asking us any questions that would make us have to say anything that we might not want to say. So I had said earlier in another interview with Jonathan that they seem very intuitive about the situation. It's almost like they're protecting us a little bit too, which is kind of a weird thing. They're not asking, and we have said, do you have any questions, and is there anything that you're worried about? And they just kind of leave it to what we want to talk about, what we want to share, which is really heartbreaking in itself, that I almost feel like they they're protecting us a little bit.
Well, they're
Wow.
smarter than you realize, kids, and they'll have
Mhm.
their time. I mean, there's going to be a time when they have to ask those questions and get those answers too, I'm sure. But they're smarter than we give them credit for sometimes as a parent, and it's certainly Lauren could tell you too. I mean, kids are pretty sharp.
Yes.
Mhm.
Well, Jason, I wanna bring you in here right now because you know the situation. You know that there was allegedly an incident with domestic violence, and it's a really bad incident, as Jared described at the beginning of the show. It was almost an attempted murder at this point. In your experience, when a mother goes missing under circumstances like this, who are the prime suspects, and how does one follow through on I guess investigating others and looking in other places when everything kind of points to one direction, if you will?
Right. And you're right, Lauren. I mean, clearly from the tone of the situation, her estranged husband made himself the prime suspect. And whether right or wrong, he's the prime suspect because most of the time when there's a situation where a couple has this kind of dynamics, where there's history of domestic violence and abuse, it tends to escalate to eventually there is domestic murder. As a former prosecutor, Jared, that as well. And so the thing is that when something like this happens, you always try to you first have to look at the history of the abuser and see if he can be named as the actual suspect and charged, or if he can be ruled out. And that's really where we're starting at. If we're assuming that Nikki is deceased somehow or being concealed somewhere, and that somebody's responsible, you're going to look at a domestic violence partner first.
Right. And something that Jarrett and I had discussed offline is there was a search or a raid on June 25th at the Redding Rancheria. It was Tyler's mother's property, his grandmother's property, and his cousin's property. Chloe and Kay, I do not believe that Tyler and Nikki's house was searched. I don't know if you can confirm that or not, but these properties that were searched, clearly there wasn't enough there to arrest anybody, which I know is disheartening, right? But do you know if their home was searched? Their home on, I believe it's Anderson Road or Olinda Road. I'm sorry.
I know their house has been searched. Whether it was to find Nikki, I'm not sure. I know that there was a search right after she went missing, but that was part of Tyler's bond, I believe. Just like a random search. And then we have heard that in the last couple weeks, there has been another, I don't know if it was like a raid, but there were police there carrying out boxes and searching around the property. And these are from witnesses in the neighborhood that had reported this to us.
Okay.
One of the things, I'm sorry, Lauren, one of the things you had said, Lauren, was we've learned and we've read, and it's been reported that a warrant was actually served on that property. And one of the things Lauren said was certainly there hasn't been any charges yet related to Nikki or any developments in Nikki's case. Now, that doesn't mean they didn't find anything. Now, oftentimes a warrant could be executed and items can be taken and analyzed and developed for evidence later. So that's something we just don't know at this point. The good thing is, if there's some bright light in any of this, is that the investigation certainly seems to be active and ongoing and sweeping in that. One thing Jason said was Tyler, and looking at the situation as an alleged abusive spouse, not only was he in that situation, he had motive here that has to be looked at, because Nikki, in addition to being his, alleged punching bag, for lack of a better word, was also a witness in a very significant criminal case against him. So that is also motivation for him to be part of something where she was removed forcibly from her ability to testify. So I think that in addition to what Jason said, oftentimes I've certainly seen these cases escalate. I hope that's not the case to a killing, but I've also seen additional motivators like trying to protect himself from the assault prosecution that he had coming and Nikki's testimony. So, he's danced himself right into the target, the center target of this thing. And if you lose your keys outside, you don't search for them inside. You got to focus on the relevant suspects here. And you don't chase ghosts and theories of people that have nothing to do with this. So certainly the people in Tyler's world appear to be being looked at pretty hard by law enforcement.
Right. And, that being said, I'd like to digress into a little story, because this situation that you just described that we all kind of feel would be common or expected, I would probably say 99% of the time that is the case. But you also have to be mindful of that 1%, those rare occasions that the obvious isn't before us. And the story of Susan Curtis comes to mind. In that story, Susan Curtis was a 14-year-old that got into a romantic relationship with her middle school coach. She became pregnant, and then she disappeared because they ran off together to Arizona to have an abortion in 1974. Shortly thereafter, she came back, and then one thing led to another. The realization that this happened, that it was an adult that had unlawful sexual interactions with a minor, he was charged, the coach. So then there was a hearing in June of 1975. 2 days later, Susan Curtis disappears. So just like the scenario, it's like, wow, did this boyfriend, this adult who had this illegal, statutory rape with a minor, did he have something to do with Susan's disappearance? Well, fast forward 15 years later, 24 hours before his execution, this man comes forward to the warden and he talks about the story, how he abducted a 15-year-old from a LDS conference at BYU in Provo, Utah, and took her off into the desert, killed her, and buried her in the desert. That man was Ted Bundy. So what that story illustrates for us here is that sometimes the obvious isn't really what happened. And I'm sure for that 15 years that Susan's coach was always to blame. He was always the prime target. And because Susan disappeared, originally the thought was, oh, she just ran away. She's trying to help her boyfriend out. And then the reality is, revealed 15 years later, a decade and a half, that she became a Ted Bundy victim. So
wow,
when you have mindfulness of something like that could happen, and then you take some of the facts, like in this case where Nikki's avalanche is found 45 miles away near the whatever Wynn Resort in Casino. It's like, how did the car get there? And if you can't tie it to Tyler or an associate, you have to keep your mind and your options open that maybe someone else drove it there. Like it wasn't just ditched there, that maybe while she was driving the avalanche, somebody, she picked up a hitchhiker or something. We got to explore all the possibilities. And I would hope that when they located her car, they tested for prints or DNA or something to prove who the last drivers were. And if she was the last driver, okay, then search the area. If she wasn't the last driver, try and pinpoint whose DNA that matches to. Maybe it's a male. Maybe it's not a known male like Tyler. But you want to explore all options and don't just pursue what appears to be the obvious, because sometimes the obvious isn't what it is.
Right. And I want to just say that we are assuming the police did their job and tested everything. We just don't know all the details, and neither do Chloe and Kaye at this point.
Correct. But I just want, the listening audience to understand that there can be more to it than that someone that seems tied to the case is the responsible one.
Absolutely. And this is just a question for Chloe and Kaye. There's a rumor that Tyler went to rehab. Maybe if he did, he could be ruled out for, if it was during the time that she went missing. I'm not sure. Is there any truth to this that you're aware of?
We had heard the same rumor, but I think, but Chloe did get a call from him today. So I'm guessing that either it's the rumor is not true or that he returned. I'm not sure, but we had heard the same rumor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it wouldn't have been back in May when she disappeared. That's kind of what I was thinking, but
no. This rumor was we heard it a couple days ago. Yeah,
That's something current.
And then wasn't her vehicle burnt? It wasn't burnt. It was melting. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Tyler bought this for Nikki about 2 weeks before she went missing. Why he's buying his estranged wife, who, has this case against him, a car? I don't quite understand. But yeah, I think that the burn
I can guess why.
Well, sure, right, but I think this was just part of the way the car came because it was used. Chloe and Kaye, can you confirm that?
Yeah, there was burn damage when they purchased it, but we don't know for a fact if there was burn damage when the vehicle was recovered.
Okay, and just piggybacking off of what Jarrett said about the fact that things take a really long time to be tested. They also seized Larry Foltz's truck the day that they searched the property. So, I guess there could be some news about that at some point. I mean, who knows? But I want to ask you, ladies, what do you think is just crucial for the public to know about Nikki and about this disappearance? Like, what should people be doing? What should they know?
I want them to know that Nikki would never just walk off like that or just disappear without telling one of us. She loves her children. She wouldn't just walk off.
Okay.
I think too, it's important to know that just because the police aren't releasing statements or where their investigation's going, it doesn't mean that they're not working on it, because I know that they are.
Mm-hmm.
And also that just because they're not making statements that they aren't getting leads. I know this is a very sensitive case, so a lot of information and a lot of leads that they're getting, they're not releasing to the public because it can hurt the investigation. So I do want the public to know that they are working on it, and tips are still very vital, even if someone thinks it's an old tip or if it's something that was from the beginning of her disappearance that they may not need to report it. Chloe can speak to this too, but we still are getting tips from people who will say, I noticed this behavior, or I had witnessed this member of the family on or around that date. And they were doing this, or they went here. And that is an important piece to the timeline, or what the key witnesses that evening or the days following. It's a key piece in confirming what they actually did right around that time. So we do want to let people know that if you saw anything during that time, or even now, those little behaviors or those events are still very important to share.
Right.
I think it's worth noting too that don't assume someone else reported something.
Absolutely.
Yes. Don't, because chances are they didn't, and chances are if you think something is immaterial, let the investigators make that call. Let them apply what you're telling them to the case, and there is still a reward of $30,000 for information that leads to the whereabouts of Nikki. And certainly, money is a motivator in this world, and people should know that as well.
Yes, and I pinned a comment from Legacy. Do you ladies believe that Nikki would have a reason to drive out to Tehama County?
Good
No,
question.
doesn't know
No,
anything.
Nikki. Yeah, Nikki's not like oh, sorry about that.
You're good.
Nikki,
Yeah.
Nikki's not like an explorer in that way. She sticks to her routine and she sticks to her routes. And we made that drive out there. My husband and I did a couple times. It is quite a trek. So even with us being adventurous and enjoying drives, that is a very remote area. She wouldn't have ventured out there for any reason.
Okay.
And
That's good to know.
Jason, in your expertise, that's an important thing worth considering is certainly Nikki's habits and things of that nature, right?
Oh, absolutely. You're going to want to recount her last 24 hours, even the last week, trying to figure out if there was some change or a new person introduced in her life that may have led to this change of her routine. So clearly her vehicle found out of the norm of her routes. Somebody either is trying to place it out of the area, so either to distract or, take away law enforcement attention to them, or it may have some relevance because somebody was with her in the car when it was taken to that location. You got to look at both as possibilities because we don't know what the circumstances, how the car got there.
Right. And I wanted to bring up this really informative article from A News Cafe that I believe was released last week, but this was the first time I had heard of a fire that actually started the day before the fire started at Tyler's house and this was July 2nd, and it was Tyler's cousin. It was a fire at Tara Webb's house with her husband, Josh. And I ran just some background on them, and I saw that Josh owns a construction company. I'm just putting that out there. I thought that was really interesting. You have a lot of access to stuff. I'm not implicating anybody. I'm just stating facts. But I cannot believe that there was a fire literally on the Redding Rancheria property one day, and then at Tyler McCain's property the very next day. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chloe and Kaye, but when you live in this area of California and fires start so easily, don't you know what to do at this point? Don't you know not to park your damn car when the engine is sparking on dry grass? Wouldn't you know that?
Yes.
Yes, that's definitely. I mean, there are warnings. There's everything out there this time of year about fires. So that is definitely, a common sense for people out here.
And that's worth to point out, one of the fires, the second fire, the 90-acre fire, was started by Tyler's vehicle, and the catalytic converter started that fire. So just so we're clear, this is someone who lived in that community for a long time who would know damn well you park an SUV on dry grass, you're going to have a problem. And then in that fire, a host of his vehicles burned, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And this is
quite a coincidence.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it's quite a coincidence.
Yeah, no, it's super weird. And then, like I said, the fire at his cousin's house the day before, which, by the way, Tara's mom is Michelle Hayward, who is the vice chair of the tribe, the Redding Rancheria tribe. But I'm glad you brought this up. Didn't Tyler admit that he dropped the truck off in the middle of nowhere? Okay, I have not seen this as news anywhere, as factual, but I've heard, oh yeah, Tyler admitted he dropped the truck there. Chloe and Kaye, do you know anything about this? And if it's factual?
So I think that report was initiated from him. Actually, I think he might have told Chloe that he had dropped the car off a bridge off Bowman Road somewhere. And that report, or I guess the police, report when they put it on
they put Bowman Road. I remember that at first. Yes. Yeah.
So it was him telling Chloe that, and Chloe telling law enforcement about that specific information. And then once, I think by the time someone had found it on the police logs, the vehicle had been recovered. So that's where that piece of information came from, that he did say that he dropped the car off on a bridge.
This just goes to show that there's so much that the public doesn't know, and which is fine. And I know that that has to happen with investigations, and this might be just a good time to read a statement from Brian Fitzgibbons, who you guys know, most of you know that he's been on the ground investigating this and helping out. And he sent Jarrett and I a statement for us to read on the show. He's sorry he couldn't be here tonight, but I will read it. In only a few days, Nikki Cheng Saelee McCain will have been missing for 3 months. We want to thank those members of the public who have come forward with information. The unfortunate reality is that we cannot disclose the leads and information that we have received and have provided to the Shasta County Sheriff Major Crimes Unit. We recognize how frustrating this is to the community who has shown such concern for Nikki. What we can share is that our tip line has been ringing on a daily basis. A number of credible leads have been provided, and these leads continue to be followed up on by USPA investigators as well as the Shasta County Sheriff's Office. USPA has created an anonymous tip form for those who have information but are afraid to come forward. The link to this form will be shared in the show description and posted on social media. There is a $30,000 reward for information that leads to locating Nikki. We urge anyone with information to call the tip line at 786-509-7135 or call the Major Crimes Unit at 530-245-6135. And I will put all of that in the episode notes, but it just goes back to what you guys said. The police are working very, very hard. They really are. And I think that this anonymous tip line, or the form, I should say, is a really good idea. I mean, because clearly it's been a thing. Nobody wants to talk because they're nervous.
And I don't mean to backtrack, but I just wanted to let you guys know the fire that happened on Tyler's cousin's property. It's actually out in Igo Ono towards his grandma's property that they own out there. And that it was on, I believe the street was called like Yoli Bola Road. And that was actually 2 or 3 days before that fire started. It was actually an area that a lot of the volunteer searchers wanted to go search, and it was posted online on a Facebook group page, and coincidentally it caught fire. So it's just a lot of coincidence. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, we do have some private groups that will do
Searches.
their own searches, and it's a smaller group, but they did post about it. Or they might have discussed it somewhere in a group that they thought was contained.
Yeah.
But that coincidentally, that did catch fire, I think, a day or two before they had planned to go out there.
And they had plans on going out there, and it was posted, and then a fire started there.
So that was, yes, very specifically that spot. Or there was,
I mean, I know what to say, but wow. And so Jarrett, can you help me out here? Like that information, if they bring that to the police or Jason, whoever, I mean, how many coincidences do we have to believe in at this point? I mean, how many are there?
Look, some people believe there's no such thing as coincidences in these investigations, but mindful of what Jason said, look, you got to keep an open mind here. Okay. However, you cannot ignore, 2 significant fires. What happens in a fire? What happens to evidence in a fire? Would you think? It gets destroyed, right? So that could be damaging to. I've had cases where people burned evidence in the past. Okay, so that's number one. The other thing, and Jason, you could follow up. You consider the actions of people. You consider how people are acting. All right. We're human beings and everyone acts differently in these situations. However, suspicious conduct is suspicious conduct. All right. Like all of that is considered when you're looking for those answers of what happened to Nikki. I mean, Jason, looking at this now, we have 2 large-scale fires on areas of interest that involve potentially land of interest and vehicles of interest. We have a witness who has vanished. We have a history of a brutal domestic, alleged brutal domestic. Looking at this now and knowing what you know about this case and your experience, do you think there's anything you haven't seen done thus far, or anything maybe that's being missed in another direction that you're seeing here at all?
Well, one of the things that pops in my mind is a question. Like we were discussing all these fires. The question is, how many other fires were there? I'm like, if it's 3 out of 100, that means less to me than if these are 3 for 3, right? If there's no other fires anywhere else in the county concerning anyone else's driving patterns or their vehicles or anything like that, or what started this fire versus that fire, because you're going to explore causation. If this was a grass fire or a lightning strike or anything like that, it's going to have a different impact on me than if it's 3 for 3 and it was all arson related or vehicle related. That sounds like it was intentional. Like if you know that your car will start a fire, it can be done so intentionally. If on the other hand, it's an accident and this fire was started by a car, the other fire was a lightning strike, you're going to have a different take on it than
Sure.
It's like simply just because there was a fire 2 days before a search. Yeah, that standing alone, when you take those two statements and couple them to draw a conclusion, it has that emotional impact. It's like, oh, it sounds like a cover-up. But you can even look for charred remnants. If there was an effort to destroy evidence, you may go out there and search, and if it's all just grass, then there's no evidence there. But if you go there and you see charred remains of clothing or something like that, because no fire really destroys all evidence. It just may destroy the DNA value in it. It may destroy the identification characteristics of like a color of a shirt or something, but it cannot destroy the fact that something was there intended to be destroyed. So like let's say, just hypothetically, a fire and destroying a body. We know for a fact that a crematorium exists to destroy something, human remains down to ashes, because a regular fire cannot. It cannot get hot enough. So if someone thinks that they're going to light a car on fire to destroy a body in the car, it'll never get that hot. We just know that, and primarily because the human body is 80% water. So you can't burn water.
And I've had cases, Jason, where fires have compromised the integrity of a particular piece of evidence.
Oh, absolutely.
We found pieces of somebody's clothing, or someone killed someone and burned the house on their way out. But, and I agree with you, certainly there'll be indicia that there was evidence that was burned.
Right.
And that's why we asked the question. It's like, okay, it's clearly not enough that there was a fire, and it could be a crazy coincidence. Let's dig deeper. What started it? How did it start? Who benefits? What was the result? What did we find as a result of the fire investigation? And correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren, there was an immediate or knee-jerk conclusion with regard to the fire on Tyler's property, right? I mean, he was essentially, there was a finding that it was an accidental fire.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, he was just cited. He wasn't arrested. And I'm sure that everybody in the chat, and Chloe and Kay, you guys know that poor guy that was mowing a lawn the month before. It wasn't even his property. He started the same type of fire. And I believe it spread to less acres than Tyler's fire. And he was arrested on the spot. But the chat is also saying that they're picking out other fires. I mean, I did hear about a fire at a storage unit. But I don't know much about that. And then there was another fire they said that I had not heard of, a fire at a landfill in Anderson. Chloe and Kay, do you know anything about that?
I have not heard about that fire.
There, I vaguely remembered reading about the fire at the landfill, but and I didn't even, I didn't dig into that one, but now. Okay. But it was the landfill by their house. It was the Anderson landfill, and this was maybe it could have been a month or two ago actually, but there was the fire at the landfill, and initially, just from what neighbors had told us, they had been taking a lot of loads out to the dump around that time. But yes, yeah, at the time, like the fires, there weren't a lot of fires in the area, so I don't think anyone paid that much attention to it. But
Mhm.
definitely would be worth looking into that one as well.
Maybe those neighbors have ring cam footage they could show you. I don't know. What the hell were they bringing out there?
We've tried to reach out to some of the neighbors, but as far as like camera footage, there's they're working on it. They're working on getting us some of that footage.
And does Tyler have a storage unit that you know of, or his family?
You know, I believe he had a storage unit near the one that was burned.
Mhm.
We can't say for certain if it was that same. The
Same
fire was on the same units that he had a unit at.
And what was Nikki's relationship like with Tyler's family before, let's say, December of 2023? His mom, his brother, his cousins, what was that like?
I mean, I think they had ups and downs. For a long time they were really good. They are a close family, and they do a lot of things together.
The
They're
McCains.
very close. What was that?
The McCains are a close family,
Yes.
or you're
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, the McCains were a very close knit family. So they did a lot together. They did a lot of family gatherings and things like that. And I know Nikki was with them a lot, so she was very close with Tyler's family as well. But I know that they,
There
you
were
know,
some
it's also
times, yeah.
What was that?
There are a few times when things, when they would get into fights and arguments, and Nikki's mentioned a few times when there was an argument and it did get physical with her.
With Tyler's
Tyler's
family?
yes.
Mhm.
Oh, with his mom. His mom got physical with Nikki.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think on more than one occasion. I think it's just, and I think with Nikki being around that, it became kind of, it wasn't that abnormal for things to get physical.
Sorry, I'm
There.
processing that. I'm thinking about my mother-in-law, like putting her, that's so crazy. I mean, what? That's
And there was a situation that the night Nikki went missing where one of the McCains took ill, right? It was Tyler's brother that was in the hospital, and
Yes.
okay, yeah, that's what I thought, and I think that kind of brought Nikki back into uh, Tyler and that situation. I mean, his brother was very ill, from what I understand, and Nikki had gone to the hospital to see him, right?
Yeah, they all went to the hospital, and we were trying to piece that together as well. Why she was bringing the vehicle back to the mother-in-law's house. And I think what happened was it was like an emergency. He went to the hospital and everyone kind of just packed into the vehicle, whoever was there. And I don't know if Nikki was picked up from her house, or if they were already at the mother-in-law's house. But we kind of, by piecing it together, that they all just kind of loaded in the car and went to the hospital. And then at some point, Nikki and Jeanette wanted to come home. So she drove Jeanette home in Jeanette's vehicle. From our understanding, I don't think Nikki and Tyler had driven there. I think they all kind of carpooled together.
And as far as you know, after Nikki took Jeanette home that night, what is the last report? Did Nikki weren't they in Jeanette's car?
According to the messages, and we're pretty sure they're her texts
Right.
coming from her, but we don't know for sure. It could very well have been someone else. But from her messages, it sounded like her and Jeanette came home from the hospital. So at this point, we're guessing Tyler's still in the hospital. We don't know for a fact. But Nikki is bringing Jeanette back to Jeanette's house, and then she takes Jeanette's car back to her own house. And then later that night went back to drop Jeanette's car back off to her at Jeanette's house.
What's wild to me is that Jeanette hasn't, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that she hasn't sat down with you guys and said, this is exactly what happened. Nikki and I did this. We left the hospital here. Nikki went here. This is the last I saw of her. This is how she seemed. This is how she was acting. This is what she said. So have you guys had this conversation with her at all? Has she reached out to you, since she would be one of the last people seen with her?
I did ask her about the Uber ride because I did hear that Nikki took an Uber. And so I wanted to clarify, okay, did she take an Uber out from your house, Jeanette, or did she take an Uber out from her house? And when I did ask Jeanette about if Nikki did take an Uber out from her house, she did tell me that Nikki did not take the Uber out from her house.
What else did she, was she short with you? Did she offer, did she seem, I guess, welcoming to your questions? Like, could you ask more?
They haven't been offering any explanation or any clarification on anything. I know that there have been some accusations out there about whether or not she was involved that night or how much information she has. And they haven't offered to us, at least, any explanation about what they were doing instead of what people are accusing them of potentially doing. I did talk to Tyler's sister, and she had talked to her mom, and she said that her mom doesn't remember anything from that night.
Oh.
So
Okay.
Jason, one of the things that came up, for example, is like the Uber ride or any of things of that nature in these investigations. Can you tell us, like, is that the kind of information you're trying to run down, confirm, close out? I mean, as you're investigating this and they're talking about comings and goings from the hospital, I mean, I'm thinking camera footage, Uber app information, cell phone data. I mean, what am I missing there? And what I kind of read the tea leaves a little bit where you think law enforcement is on this thing.
Well, and you're right, Jared. Much of that stuff, especially now in the 21st century, we have a lot of digital evidence. We got a lot of information we can get from apps and services provided through apps, Google, GPS locations, cell phone towers, and the like. All of that can play in. Much of it requires a warrant, some kind of law enforcement subpoena.
Sure.
But if you know that, somebody used a service like Uber, there's always going to be somebody willing, the driver or whatnot is willing to share information if it's to help, because, many of us feel a civic duty to help, like in a missing persons case, to help it along. It's like, especially if it may ensure that there's no suspicion directed to me. It's like, hey,
Sure.
I'll tell you everything I know. Because sometimes things like that do happen. We've heard the stories where the Uber driver either becomes a victim of assault or a theft of service or something. We've also seen the opposite, where the driver is the offender of, a sexual assault or an assault of some nature to one of their riders. So anytime stuff like that comes up, the Uber, the corporate side really wants to help. They want to make sure that it's a riding experience that is pleasurable and fear-free. So anytime something like that comes up, they're quick to, delve into it and issue a statement saying, hey, the driver's been cooperative, we know this or that. So if it's uncertain if there was an Uber driver, that should be something that somebody of an authority, either an attorney for the family, a legal representative, or law enforcement, should get into that right away and either confirm it or move on with some other angles.
Yeah, and something that Legacy brought up, and we brought this up before, is I don't know if this is strange. I think it kind of is for a missing persons, but the fact that we don't know what Nikki was last seen wearing the night she disappeared, there's no description, she was last seen wearing XYZ. I mean, I'm sure they have footage of her on the hospital cameras. Obviously, they're not releasing that, but I find that to be a little strange, but maybe it's not. Maybe I'm overthinking.
I don't think you are. I think it's very important that last descriptions are very important, because if somebody out there in the public finds discarded clothing matching that may be a clue. Or if you find somebody wearing that, I mean, there's plenty of occasions out there where people misidentify somebody. It comes to mind as Sebastian Rogers, where they thought they saw him in a different state and it wasn't him. But if article of clothing, you can easier match somebody than just a physical description.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chloe and Kay, I meant to ask you this earlier. Did Nikki mention any concerns about finances or assets, or do you know if there was, a life insurance policy that she had?
We don't know if there's a life insurance policy on her,
Mhm.
but she doesn't have any that she had put on anyone else. And yeah, and she didn't take care of the finances. So I don't think she really had, she wasn't really involved in that.
Okay. I mean, I just keep thinking, I'm thinking of like silly things as we're talking, but like what did Tyler ever get on her for spending too much money, or what were their fights like before December, before he had this huge outburst?
I know that before, when everything was good, he would take money, like hold money from her. And so
So Nikki didn't work. She was a stay-at-home mom. So there was a little bit of the control with the finances, and but their arguments were mostly jealousy issues.
Right.
That was mainly the things that they would fight about, is just and then obviously after the domestic violence case, most of their arguments, I believe, centered around her recanting her charges.
mhm.
Well, and one of the things, and Jason, you could tell us too, holding finances like that is control. In an abusive relationship, oftentimes it's about manipulation and control.
Oh, it happens all too often. I mean, the violence aspect of it is when the abuser feels they've lost control. So all those measures are in place beforehand, the controlling the money, controlling who they can see and talk to, and the times they can do different activities. That's all there and is well crossed the line before that abuser gets to the point of physical restraint, and then it goes to injury. So yeah, it's common that the pattern escalates from simple control to violent control.
And did Nikki express any concerns or fears in, the weeks leading up to her disappearance? I mean, I know she must have been really shaken up after December, but what was she like? Did she say that she was scared of Tyler? Did she say that, she was trying to work it out? I'm trying to understand.
She, the last, I want to say, like week and a half up to the 2 weeks, she was very confident that she was going to leave Tyler. And she did tell me on May 7th that she was going to divorce him. And I asked her, really? Why? And she just gave me all the reasons. But before those 2 weeks, there was a lot of text message to where she was concerned for her safety. And that at point when she did try to leave Tyler for a little bit, that he somehow found her and she was at this safe spot. And
When she had blatantly said, he's trying to kill me, or I think he's trying to kill me.
This was
Or
a text message?
yes.
a lot.
Okay, so I'm going to stop here. So Jarrett, Jason, please tell me, at this point, we've convicted Scott Peterson on all circumstantial evidence. How the living hell is this not circumstantial enough to put some cuffs on this guy?
Well,
You've got
First
everything.
of all, all of that is compelling. I'm not going to downplay that is significant and won't ultimately find its way into the prosecution if that day comes. The difference between this case and Scott Peterson is you knew what happened to Lacey Peterson. So we don't have right now.
But not right away, right?
No.
But we
They had her body.
They had
after.
her.
They had her body after. Oh, then they arrested him. Okay, sorry.
Right.
They were looking at him.
At this point, look, and it would be premature to speculate as far as whether or not they can move forward. I just don't know what they would have as far as Nikki's, I would say, like proof of life or death at this point. So I don't know. But the reality is none of this looks good. We would have cases where somebody says, so-and-so said he was going to kill me. And people say, well, people say that all the time. But when the person ends up deceased, moments after that or days after that, that statement becomes intent. That statement becomes a significant piece of evidence. Those things, the palpable fear that Nikki had, the motivation that Tyler had, the escalating nature of the abuse, the loss of control, the statement 2 weeks before that she's drawn a line in the sand, she's going to leave him, all of that, if she is found and she's harmed or killed, can be presented in a courtroom. And again, I hope that's not the case. I hope we have a much better outcome in this situation. But rest assured, that information will find its way into a prosecution if that day comes.
And just to add on to that, the most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim is when they've made the decision and conveyed that to their abuser that they are leaving, that they are seeking a divorce. We can cite to hundreds of examples of where women end up brutally injured or dead when they ask for a divorce from their abuser. That's why we have battered women shelters. They're in place to protect them from the abuse that's imminent, like would be perceived by Nikki as expressed to her sisters. It's pretty obvious she thought it was imminent, that she was in imminent danger.
So Chloe, that was on May 7th. She texted you, I am going to divorce him. Okay. And then she went missing a week later. I mean, if this is a volatile relationship, I'm going to go ahead and speculate that homeboy saw that text. I'm just going to put that out there, and that he freaked out. Yeah.
He also mentioned to me that I think someone hacked into my phone. She did mention that to me too, right after she told me that.
So she thinks somebody could have been monitoring, a third party was monitoring her phones. Also, Jason, you would agree with me, that's a form of control I've seen in domestic abuse cases. GPS tracking, hacking into the phone, right?
Right. I've seen where they even subtly just learn their passcode and they access remotely. I've seen where they download spyware on their device. So it's entirely possible that she was being spied on, monitored, a little sneak and peek during someone's shower. Things like that do happen. And when a paranoid spouse wants to know what you're doing, who you're talking to, who you're texting, they will find a way, even if it's sneak your phone out of the bedroom in the middle of the night and, scroll through your conversations. It happens. I've had cases where people try to hire me to go through a spouse's device, hire a digital forensics expert to extract data. So, when there's a will, there's a way. And if he wanted to know who she's talking to and what she's saying, and it happened to be that he learned that she expressed her desire for divorce, it could have escalated to the ultimate, worst case scenario.
And Legacy asked, did Nikki mention if Tyler was trying to get her to drop the charges, or was Tyler's family encouraging her to drop the charges? I mean, I feel like I know the answer, but I would love to hear.
Yeah, from what Nikki told us and from what actually the family had told us themselves, Tyler actually said this too, is they were trying to convince her to drop the charges. And he said to, I think to Chloe's significant other that, he's like, everyone thinks I killed her, but I didn't. I had offered her money to drop the charges. So he himself had said that he had offered her money for her. So it was a huge topic.
He said, everyone thinks I killed her. I offered her money to drop the charges. Okay, so can I just be a nerd here? He never denied it. He never said, I did not kill her. He never said, I did not do X, Y, Z. He just said, everyone thinks this, but I offered her money. Just saying. Just saying, words matter.
That's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This makes me sick to my stomach. I guess I'm frustrated, Jarrett, and I'm frustrated, Jason, because I just feel like circumstantially, I know without somebody's body, I hate saying, I'm sorry, Chloe and Kaye. I don't know how to speak sometimes and be like,
That's okay.
okay,
You're
sorry.
okay.
Yeah, without having a person, they can't do anything, I guess. But it's like,
No, they could. I'm not saying they can't before
okay,
the comments blow up here. No, I'm saying this investigation is ongoing. They're continuing to develop leads and evidence. They're not there yet. So
Right.
okay,
all of the things you're saying
yeah,
and your level of frustration, understandable, but they're not there yet. I think then if they were to feel like they've plateaued in the investigation,
hmm,
then you assess the situation and say, what can we do at this point? I mean, we've had, is this a homicide situation?
yeah,
And how are we going to establish that? And who's responsible? So all of the none of this is in vain yet. All of the things that look bad for a certain person in this case aren't in vain. They could be all headed toward ultimately a prosecution. They're admissible in that presentation, but the investigation isn't over. The worst thing you could do is to charge prematurely, okay, if things are headed in the right direction, because that starts the clock, and it's not something you want to do, especially if you know your investigation is continuing to bear fruit.
So I'm searching right now. I mean, I'm thinking about the search they did on June 25th. How long in California? Because I know state by state it's different. Evidence processing and DNA testing and all of that. In California, it's saying, and again, I don't know how credible some of these sites are, but it's saying it could take 72 hours at some places. I mean, that seems like very quick, and obviously like that's promising, I guess.
For
Well,
evidence processing?
Yeah, I think
like DNA, like whatever they collected from, let's say they've got Chunner's truck. Let's say they swept the houses. How I know that in certain states, I think it was like Kentucky, I read somewhere that it could take a year, but I'm looking in California and it's like, 72 hours. But again, this is a dumb Google search, but.
well, you could pay a private firm to do it really quick for you. The reality is, it's not we don't even know if it's a DNA situation. It could be a cell phone extraction situation, and analyzing it. Who knows? I mean, or it's processing leads that are coming in through the tip lines. I mean, it's just where they're all leading in a particular direction. So who knows what it is? The only thing I would say is it appears this is an active investigation. Leads are being pursued.
Yes.
And all of these things we're talking about, I appreciate your frustration, Lauren, and everybody's frustration. Believe me when I tell you, I mean, nobody more than Chloe and Kaye, but the reality is we have to be a little prudent and patient, because if you believe, and you both said you believe law enforcement are doing their jobs, let them do their jobs. They're going to get answers here.
Right. And I guess my question, Jarrett, was more like, hey, we've got this truck that belongs to Tyler's cousin. I see a weird stain in it. Let me take a swab and swab it. How long does that take to come back, that swab?
Well, but again, we don't know for sure that truck and that particular investigation was related to this. If that was the case,
example.
Yeah, I think you can get that information. So that search was in July.
June 25th.
Oh, June 25th. I'm sorry. So it was the end of June. Yeah, you would have, if that was the case, you could potentially have that answer by now. But we don't know that that's the case. We don't know that that's the only thing they're looking at.
And I think that the evidence processing, it takes like a month. And I think with I think they can only send so many items to get processed each time they send it in. So it kind of goes, they have to prioritize, or I guess like triage the evidence, or the samples, or the items they want to analyze. So I think that's also another delay in a lot of all this evidence that they have to get the results back, and then piecing some of those puzzles. And I do want to also add, I know that Larry Foltz's truck was, they took that, but I want to, and I don't know this for sure, but I have heard that Jeanette's vehicle was also taken during that raid. Chloe, do you know if that Has that been confirmed, Chloe?
Yes, she did tell me that they took her vehicle. I didn't
Oh,
think they did, but she did tell me that they took her vehicle.
I will ask Brian if he knows any more information about that. And then somebody in the chat just wanted to put it out there. Is it possible that Nikki could be hiding somewhere? If you guys want to answer that.
If she was hiding, we would know where she was hiding.
Yeah.
There's not many places that Nikki is familiar with, and the only place that she would hide at, we would know exactly where it was, because she would ask us to help her.
Mhm.
So we don't believe that that's what she's doing.
And I'm just
Right. And that being said, even if it was a shelter situation, law enforcement has direct access to that data as well. So given the fact that they needed her for a prosecution, they would have explored that, especially once a family member brought it up as that she was a missing person. They would cross those channels and figure that out early on. So there's little doubt in my mind she's in a battered shelter somewhere or something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I had just pinned a comment about there was a 2-year-old that died on the property. So sad. So yes, it could have been related to that. I believe that 2-year-old passed away in May. Correct me if I'm wrong.
March.
March.
It was
Okay.
March. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, that's so sad. And yes, Legacy, I would hope law enforcement has her phone. I would really hope so. Well, Chloe and Kaye, is there anything else that you want to say to the community or to the people?
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone who's been so supportive and sharing my sister's story, and they're not giving up, and they're being so awesome, and they're so nice. And I just want to say thank you guys so much for supporting us and
And also being so vigilant with their research
Yeah.
too. We have a lot of people in the community who are doing their own very impressive research and investigation on just some of the connections, and some may not be anything, but they're doing a really good job and sharing a lot of that information with us too. So we do appreciate that. And then also
People working really hard out there.
yeah,
They
we have
are.
some good investigators out there.
And the helping us, we have family members who are putting on a bracelet fundraiser for us. So yeah, it's been really nice, and they've been making the bracelets and selling them, and just to help with everything. So
That's amazing. Sorry, I muted myself because I was about to cough. I have a cold, so I was like, "Don't everybody look at me! I'm gonna look horrible, and I'm gonna cough all over the place." Well, thank you guys for joining us, and I just want to say I went back and I looked at. You posted, I think, Chloe, the letters that Nikki's kids wrote their mom, and if you see these letters, you guys, you will just like get off your ass, even if you're not even local, and you will go search yourself, because they are just so moving, and I just can't imagine. So, Jason, we thank you so much for joining the show, for your expertise. And Jarrett, as always, you're the best.
My pleasure. Thank you all. It's really been enlightening, and we learned a lot tonight. So
Thank you guys.
Continue
We did, and
try to find answers.
I'm gonna put the form, just so everyone knows, in the episode link, the form to contact the USPA anonymously, and I can also drop it in a Facebook group as well, so people have it, so they don't have to be nervous. I'll do it right now.
Thank you, Lauren.
All right.
thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for watching and for being so vigilant about finding Nikki. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, ladies.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. Thank you.